Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I have a video for you that didn't end up going anything like how I was expecting when I first started doing my research for it. The gameplay you're seeing is a bit of Black Ops 3 and we'll swap over to MWR in a minute, but it was about a week ago a fan asked me on stream, related to the YouTube Adpocalypse of course, is a Bigot's dollar worth less? And he had some follow-up questions asking, does it matter if companies market to racists? Or do racists somehow spend less money? I mean, they still have money to spend, they still buy things, so somebody should be marketing to them, right? So why would YouTube be pulling money off of channels for alleged racism or adding in stricter content guidelines for monetization and things like that? And I think that it's ultimately a fantastic question and one that I had hoped to thoroughly answer, but my research in this topic turned out to be incredibly complicated. We're going to start with basics of marketing data, just for the handful of you that are unfamiliar with it. You have demographics and psychographics. Demographics are like survey data, census data. It's age, location, income, do you own a car, how big your family is, what's your race, things like that. Psychographics, few people outside the marketing community are familiar with. Psychographics could roughly be religious beliefs, lifestyles, political beliefs, personality traits. Are you a hipster? Are you a baby boomer? Do you believe in a strong community? Are you an isolationist? Do you make risky decisions or are you risk averse? Do you care about the environment or not? They're personal beliefs, they're mental things, and psychology, psychographic data, that's kind of how it is. And the information age has made learning about these things easier than ever before. It has completely revolutionized marketing data thanks to Google and Facebook. With these two companies and the data that they gather, along with other bigger companies, which I also queried, you can learn a lot about a group of people. You can learn where they live, how much money they make, what their political beliefs are, what their spiritual beliefs are, beliefs about race and racism, are they risky, risk averse, how they spend their money, the clothes they like to buy, lots of interesting things. And I thought it would be a brilliant video to go and hit some of these resources and learn about the demographics and psychographics of racists. Unfortunately, I just couldn't find any. I searched and I searched, and it wasn't just Google. I looked around a lot of places. I tried some bigger marketing websites. I tried some places where you can even buy data on these types of groups, and I found so very, very little data about how racists spend their money, where they live, how much money they make, or anything that would be even related to marketing in general. I'm pretty sure it was considered at some point a toxic research topic that nobody really wanted to do, nobody wanted to put their name on, and nobody wanted to get involved with. There's also some technical questions involved, like how do you define racism? I mean, is it being openly hostile? Is it holding a stereotypical belief? Is it laughing at a racist joke? Is it advocating genocide? Does reverse racism count? Groups not, well, in the US is related anyway, pretty much any group discriminating against white. One of the things I did find is that companies doing research had difficulty testing for it. They did try to test for racism inside political parties, which isn't really what I was looking for. And they found that self-reporting was very, very inaccurate. So what they decided to go with is instead ask a series of questions like, would you let your daughter or son date a person of a different race? Would you support a black president? How comfortable are you with sharing a bus with Arabs? Just kind of things like that. And these tended to get much more accurate data. And finally, how racist does a person have to be to even qualify to be put in that bucket? So I pretty much came up blank, which was very, very frustrating to me. And the next idea was, hey, you know what I'll do? I basically know where racists should be living in the United States. It's that nice, like, southeast region down there, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Texas, you know, places where slaves quite literally used to live and their descendants still do. And I can just pull their demographic and marketing and income data and compare that to California and Oregon and New York and relatively liberal places. But after taking a step back and thinking about it, that was almost like cheating, because I know the results ahead of time. I know those states are poorer, they don't spend as much money, and the results would be that racists would therefore definitely be less valuable. And it would also be intellectually dishonest, because racism in the United States is not simply limited to the South. It exists everywhere. And I was thinking about it, you know, I've seen plenty of racist and bad things and met some really racist people in relatively liberal states, both on the West and East Coast in my travels. And there are some bits of of demographic data that suggests like how racist certain states are compared to others and the most racist cities and how they use hate speech and some interesting things like that. Not the hardest or best data, but some of it, especially the Twitter data, suggests that California scores surprisingly high on the racism test. It is a surprisingly racist place for a state that likes to pass such liberal laws, or at least parade itself as being a bastion of tolerance. Which got me to thinking, if you're looking at racism as a negative, which I know not all people do, obviously the people that hold those beliefs will view it as a positive, as a bastion of protecting their community or whatever, but if you just look at it as a negative and you want to identify a location, you really can't do that because it does vary a lot state from state in surprising ways, city to city, neighborhood by neighborhood, group to group, and it's kind of a widespread problem. So perhaps that isn't the best way to address the question either, because there's not any good data for it. And finally, I realized that this is just an issue of brand image on YouTube's end, on bigger advertising, on old school companies, and on my end too, because when you come to direct marketing and sponsored deals and advertising, of which I handle a lot on YouTube, and yes, I am sponsored by many companies, all of which you can find there down there below in the description. Click on links and buy things if you feel like it. It makes me money, yada, yada, yada. It's because these companies will reach out to you or your website or your show or your brand, and they say that their brand and their image closely aligns with your views, your beliefs, your personality, and your followers, which would be their customers. They believe that they can reach more of their customers or more potential customers through using your brand and your image, your voice, which, you know, makes sense. As you'll see, all of my sponsorships down there are about gaming accessories and gaming apparel, and all of it has, well, not all, but most of it has to do with console stuff, because I mostly post console gameplay here, and most people that watch are console gamers, so it kind of makes sense. However, some sponsorships can turn sour very, very fast when the individual does something taboo. For example, T. Martin and his CSGO Lotto scandal, he lost a lot of sponsorships over that. That was a financial hardship for him, and I'm not over here playing the world's smallest violin or trying to make boohoo T. Martin because he's doing fine on his own, but it's a very relevant example. If the company sees you doing something taboo, something that they don't want associated with their brand or their image, they are often likely to terminate that marketing deal for fear of backlash. They don't want to be seen supporting you either financially or passively if you have extreme beliefs. They don't want bad brand associations, which I have an example of in a little bit, and they're also afraid of boycotts or backlash, like boycotting Chick-fil-A. Some people boycott Hobby Lobby. A random example I could think of is, imagine there was a company that made the best white bed sheets, which there's a big market for. A lot of bed sheets are white. They made the most comfortable, the smoothest, the best, and they just figured, hey, why not market to the Klan? Why don't we get the KKK involved and market them the best white sheets to make the most comfortable robes and hoods possible? And they do that campaign, but then people from outside that group see it. They're very likely to be upset with the company, to boycott the company, to not want anything to do with the company because it doesn't match up with their beliefs, and they'll go way out of their way to be spiteful toward the KKK. A lot of people do. Other examples in real life, there was Michael Phelps smoking marijuana, which cost him millions of dollars in sponsorships. One of his friends took a picture of him hitting a bong, and that was extremely expensive. The political one, the forerunner to the YouTube Adpocalypse, was Kellogg's dumping Breitbart over fears of hate speech and dumping a lot of the more right-wing websites in general. There was, of course, the YouTube Adpocalypse, where old-school advertisers pulled ads from YouTube when they saw that they were showing up on videos they considered racist. There was Lance Armstrong losing close to $100 million in sponsorships after his drug abuse scandal became public because no company wanted to associate their sports product with somebody that was infamous for using performance-enhancing drugs. Southwest Airlines ended a 26-year I think it was a co-marketing agreement with SeaWorld once it came to light that SeaWorld was abusing animals. They decided to completely end it, and currently the next big one that's boiling is that there's lots of US companies that are starting to get flack for the 2022 Qatar Olympics over them using what we'll say is, quote, slave labor or gross violations of worker safety standards. And they're already starting to get some flack, but as we get much closer to that, it's only going to increase. In this context, spending your advertising dollars on racists or almost any sort of group with an extreme taboo belief is going to be a poor investment. And there will always be less people with backwards beliefs than with progressive ones, and this even includes the progressive escalator or treadmill or whatever you want to call it, because as we all know, what was progressive in 1950 would not be considered progressive today, but the reality is there's always new people being born, growing up and changing, and in order for any sort of belief to be considered backwards, taboo, too old, or unpopular, it always has to be the minority belief. If the majority of people believe that something is correct, then no matter what moral or ethical standard you put on it, the taboo will always be on the smaller group, and that's just kind of how it is. So as a company, your goal therefore is to reach the largest possible audience, and doing some sort of strange sub-marketing to target a smaller and, let's say, more backwards audience at the risk of pissing off the big audience is pretty much always going to be a bad business investment, which leads me to the last little bit. I did a lot of looking into basically hate websites. I just found like the most garbage websites you could find, hate groups of every time, of every kind, creed, color, whatever it is that you wanted, and tried to see what kind of advertisements were on them. And oddly enough, I found that most of them were advertisement free. They mostly just sold merchandise of their own kind. It seemed like advertisers just wouldn't take their group, which I found to be very interesting. So in short, is a bigot's dollar worth less? Well, no. And do racists spend less money? No. Is it impossible to actually market toward them? Maybe, because we don't have very good data for it. But big companies are afraid of negative brand associations blowing up in their faces, which is why they're pulling advertisements from YouTube, from Breitbart, and some of these other kind of websites. So I hope you learned something from this discussion. I know it was a little bit long-winded, but I did feel that it was necessary to answer a question from a fan. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.